in the room, but it's lovely to have people in the room. So do feel free to act as an audience, to clap and possibly to boo if you really must. Just so that other people out there can see that there's a live audience in here. We will be taking some photographs for publicity purposes. So if you don't want your photograph to appear, please do approach Kate. Kate, do you want to wave? And she'll make sure that we don't use any of your photos in future. And just the usual one about phones, please, on silent if possible. Thank you very much indeed. Excellent. So it's almost time. I'll call us to order, but are you ready, Philip, to do the live streaming? Okay, well, we'll make a start in that case then. Well, good morning, everyone. And what a life and a privilege it is for some of us to be together face to face for the launch of Village Halls Week 2022. So very different from last year. I'm Richard Quallington, Executive Director of ACRE, and my task is to provide the continuity for today's event and keep us to time. We're also live streaming, so please bear with me and wish us luck. For those in the room, it's great that you're able to be here in person. And to those who are joining us online, wherever you are, at the kitchen table, in the office, in front of the fire, or watching from your local village hall, because the broadband is better there, thank you. It's lovely to have you with us too. Now, Village Halls Week has become quite an annual tradition. We could not have imagined that what was to be a one-off exercise to celebrate the unique contribution Village Halls play in sustaining, thriving and vibrant rural communities would acquire such a life of its own. Envisaged originally as a social media campaign, the last 5 years have certainly seen it develop. Remember the Ian Macmillan poem, A Teapot as Big as the Moon, jointly commissioned by ACRE and the National Rural Touring Forum, or the event with children's author Steve Anthony, GRCC and the local school in Chedworth Village Hall, or the I Love Village Halls badges that featured heavily in 2020 at the launch in Westminster, hosted by our guest speaker's predecessor, Lord Gardner, and the marathon of Zoom events last year during lockdown, including the Village Halls Doomsday Book, which now has over 850 entries from village halls the length and breadth of England. If you remember these, then congratulations. You've been with us for the last 5 years of Village Halls Week. This year, we continue to celebrate the huge contribution village halls make to the life of their local communities, and especially the people, the thousands of volunteers who run and manage them, and the many services and local facilities they offer. Many provided a real lifeline during the pandemic. And now, as society starts to open up again, we're focusing this year's campaign on looking to the future, on innovation, and on encouraging all village hall committees to do something different. Try something new to benefit your community. And do please tell us about it. Share your stories on social media using the pledge cards. So to today's event, and we're delighted that Lord Richard Benyon, Minister of State at DEFRA, is with us in person to launch this year's campaign, and we'll be hearing from him shortly. Village Halls Week is all about celebrating what communities are doing on the ground. So we're going to start with 2 local presentations. Firstly, a few words of welcome from Tim Parry, who heads up CCB, ACRE's member in Berkshire, and then John Brims, Chair of the Victory Room Management Committee, our hosts for today. John is going to tell us a little bit about their project, the recent refurbishment of this building. So firstly, over to Tim.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I have the pleasure of officially welcoming you all to the Victory Room in Bucklebury, to Berkshire, and to this event that marks the start of Village Halls Week. This week we celebrate these priceless venues and the contribution that they make to the health and well-being and the social fabric of the communities that they serve. I think it would be difficult to grow up in a rural community and not be involved in one way or another with activities that take place at the local halls. And genuinely, some of my earliest memories are for activities that I attended at the local hall where I grew up in Barkham. I went to a play group there, and I remember my job was helping to take the easels out of the storeroom and bring them into the hall on painting day. And easels that seemed like about that big, but were probably about that big. And I remember with some disquiet one day, when a chap that I'd never seen before came to the hall, set up a big tent in the middle of the room. And I watched as one by one my friends were led by the hand into this tent. And I said to myself, there's no way I am going in that tent. And when somebody came up to me and said, so Tim, have you had your photographs taken? I cheerfully said, yes, I have. A lie which perhaps inevitably came to light some weeks later when all the portraits were up on the wall and there wasn't one of me. Something that perhaps my mother, poor mother, was more disappointed about than I was. But anyway, from that day, all the Cubs and Scouts events, the jumble sales, the discos, the barn dances, all of those activities that took place in the hall that I enjoyed are really the first theme that we're going to be celebrating this week in Village Halls Week. The second theme actually is Kate. Kate Mead's our halls advisor. Kate's colleagues within ACRE and right across the ACRE network who provide their expertise, their advice and guidance and training to all of you guys whose responsibility is looking after these amazing venues. So the second theme are the halls advisors right across the network, and thanking them for all the work that they do to support these venues. Finally, the third theme of our celebrations this week are all you guys, the volunteers, the many, many thousands of volunteers who you give your time for nothing to keep these venues up and running, safe. Our well-being rests upon your shoulders while we're using these venues. And in that time-honoured tradition of events in village halls, I'd like to raise my mug and salute you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. I don't think you'll get away without a photograph today, though. We're just doing a quick microphone change, so it gives me a chance to remind everyone about the pledge cards. Downloadable from the ACRE website, alongside lots of other information and ideas and local events that are taking place during the week. We're encouraging all those in this year's Village Halls Week, Village Hall management committees, sponsors, those who provide advice and support to village halls, and other bodies who utilise these local assets. In fact, we want everyone who has some connection to village halls to make a pledge. There are some on the table, but this is what they look like. So if you want to make a pledge and want to fill it in today, you can do it here and now, or download it. So write your pledge, take a photo, and then post it on social media. Because still at the heart of Village Halls Week, there remains a social media campaign. So I think we've made that transition, haven't we now? Good. So welcome, John. The podium is yours.
Thank you, Richard. Oh, good morning, everyone. My name is John Brims. I'm the Chair of Trustees at the Bucklebury Victory Room. And I've been asked to say a few words about the refurbishment of the Victory Room. I'll start by saying why it was so important to save this building. First of all, it's a historical parish asset. It's actually built on land that was bequeathed by Lady Webley Parry Price in 1917. And it was to commemorate 39 local lives lost during the Great War. The building was actually second-hand when it came here. It was actually moved from Frilsham in 1920, which is a village not far from here. A loan of £220 was taken to fund the purchase of the building, and the first public meeting was held here on the 7th of July, 1920. From reading the first minutes of that on that day, you get a sense that the Victory Room was very much a community hall. The opening sentence says the meeting was well attended. At the meeting, it was unanimously agreed to call the hall the Victory Room. They went on to say that £85 had already been raised to repay part of the loan. We actually have handwritten minutes from 1920 up to 1975, and they retain a huge amount of history in the hall, and they make very interesting reading. They go on to say parishioners continue to work hard to repay the loan with whist drives, dances, jumble sales, and all sorts of events. And there's also a very important relationship with this hall with the Bucklebury Recreation Ground. The first Bucklebury Football Club was established in 1926. So what other benefits does this hall bring to the community? Well, it's a hall that's used by children and youths. We have the guides, scouts, cubs and beavers here 3 nights or 3 evenings per week. We have 2 football teams that use the recreation ground and the hall on Saturday and Sunday mornings. The hall is also used for a lot of children's parties, and it's also a hall that's used for the well-being of the community. We currently have art classes, a sewing group, a couple of Pilates groups, we have yoga, and with the reopening of the hall, we have more inquiries all the time for different uses. It's also a hall that's used for community events. Before the pandemic, we were holding 3 to 4 events per year, including quiz nights, wine tasting, we had a biannual ceilidh, and we actually held a beer fest and family fun day for 11 years up until the pandemic struck. Hopefully 2022 will be our 12th. We've worked with Bucklebury Community Group to present a best of Bucklebury, including showing artwork, photography, and we actually ran a tea room for the weekend for the event. Well, these are a couple of pictures of the Victory Room in May 2021, before we did the refurbishment project. And as you can see, it was looking a bit tired, and it was nearing the end of its useful life. So when we set about, and then there's a couple more photographs here on the internals of the hall. Internally, the main hall was quaint, but very narrow and difficult to use. It was absolutely freezing cold in winter, and it had absolutely no insulation. The kitchen was a galley kitchen, and you could barely get a couple of people in there at a time. And the toilets could not be accessed by anyone with a disability. So when we set about the project of refurbishing the hall, we said that one of the main objectives was to retain the look and the feel of the original hall. And we wanted to future-proof it for future generations, or for next generations. What we did was we replaced the old corrugated iron and reclad the exterior with plastic-coated galvanized steel that actually has a 40-year guarantee. We wanted to retain some of the internal fabric of the hall that was loved by so many. So what we did was we kept part of the old hall and repurposed it as a meeting room for about 16 people. Now the pictures there, you can see this elevation is the most recognized of the old Victory Room. And so we wanted to make sure that the renovated hall paid homage to the original hall. And you can see there the front elevation as, well, I think we've done that. Part of the project was to add an extension to the hall and create a new hall that you're sitting in today, which is much larger than the old one. Someone actually said they didn't want to have a soulless hall. And I think with the asymmetrical design, the vaulted roof, the steel trusses that replicate the structure of the original hall, we've achieved a characterful hall. We wanted to upgrade all the facilities so that they could be used by all abilities, which is what we've done. We installed underfloor heating. We've installed lighting that's for all uses. So we have a different ambience for evening events and for daytime events. And lastly, we wanted to make the use of those wonderful views over the Berkshire countryside. We also wanted to address the environmental impact. The aim was to make the hall as green as possible. When the hall was reclad, it included 180 to 240 mil of insulation in the walls and the roof. We installed a 16 kilowatt air source heat pump with underfloor floor heating in the new hall, and it has radiators everywhere else in the hall. And all the hot water is supplied by point of use water heaters, so there's no wastage. And here we have a view of the hall before and after. This is the result of 4 years' work from concept, design, raising funds, planning and building regulation approval, construction, and then completion. We now have a hall that's fit for today's requirement and hopefully for many years to come. Since reopening, the bookings are up over 90%. We have 3 new weekly block bookings and we have lots of inquiries. And so far we've had a very positive reaction from the community. We will have a formal opening when an open day when COVID allows. I would like to end with some thank yous. The renovation and extension of this hall could not be done without the support of Bucklebury Parish Council, West Berkshire Council, the Good Exchange with the Greenham Trust, and some local trusts, the Donington Trust, the Englefield Charitable Trust, the Gerald Palmer Ealing Trust, and the Lord Ayliffe Family Trust. Also thanks to funding from ACRE and DEFRA, and also the support of the CCB, particularly Kate Meads, who helped us through some of the application processes. And also a big thank you to the parishioners that actually contributed to the renovation of this hall. And last but not least, the trustees, not only the current ones, but those who have served over many years. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Well, there you have it, the essence of Village Halls Week, a celebration of what a community like Bucklebury can achieve with a little timely advice from the ACRE network, some financial support from sympathetic funders. Thank you, DEFRA, for the VHIG fund, and of course, huge amounts of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears from the volunteers who have driven the project and made it all possible. And there are hundreds, thousands of Buckleburys across rural England, all working hard to do the best for their communities, bringing new services and facilities to meet local need. That's what Village Hall Week is all about, a celebration of ideas into action and those who bring them to fruition. Now, I'm conscious that I am keeping you from hearing from our guest speaker, so I will be brief, but I did want to mention a few highlights of the week to whet your appetite. We'll be following today's theme, Do Something Different, with tomorrow on Something for Everyone. What difference is your hall making to people locally, and is everyone included? Wednesday, we'll be celebrating and supporting the arts and what village halls can and are doing to support art and cultural activities. And on Thursday, we'll be focusing on what village halls can do to contribute to net zero. You've obviously done an awful lot here already. Beacons of hope for a sustainable future. Friday, financial resilience will be important and will be our theme. And on Saturday and Sunday, the focus will be on local events and activities. So do visit the ACRE website, and in addition to the pledge cards, you'll also be able to download other information and a guest blog for each day, which we hope will enthuse and inspire. Talking of enthusing and inspiring, I'd like to move now straight on to introduce our guest speaker this morning. That said, I doubt that Lord Benyon will give much introduction to those in the room, as he was the local MP for this area, part of the Newbury constituency from 2005 to 2019. During that time, Richard Benyon was Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Natural Environment, Water and Rural Affairs at DEFRA. So he's no stranger to the role played by village halls, or for that matter, the ACRE network. He now sits in the House of Lords with a similar brief as Minister for Rural Affairs, Access to Nature and Biosecurity. And we're delighted to welcome him to speak to us now and to launch Village Halls Week 2022. Minister, the audience online and here is waiting to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Tim, and thank you to everyone involved in this amazing project here at Bucklebury for hosting us here. I can't think of a better example, and I know there are many around the country which will be feeling similarly proud of what they've achieved in making their village hall, their community hall, relevant for the future. But this is a fantastic example. For those of you watching online, if the photographer who made that will forgive me, the picture of the view from here didn't do it credit. We're in the heart of a Pang Valley, for me one of those beautiful parts of the country. And there's this chalk stream that flows down the valley here called the Pang. And this hall, like so many, has seen communities ups and their downs. It was created, as was said, out of the most terrible adversity. 39 people in a very small community dying in the First World War. And yes, they were celebrating victory by creating it and creating the Victory Room, but there was also a tragedy of incalculable proportions, which has been echoed across the country in the creation of so many villages just over 100 years ago. And more recently, the height of the seats you're sitting in, less of a human tragedy in that luckily no one died, but a community tragedy that we had floods of quite extraordinary significance in this tiny little community, to the point where the village hall was likely to be unviable because you wouldn't have been able to insure it. And the community itself, the houses around here, would arguably not have been viable because it was impossible for them to get flood insurance. And Bucklebury pulled together and came up with a scheme to create a flood protection, which became the model which we used in DEFRA and is now used right around the country of partnership funding. And so on the back of that, places like this could could be used in the future. Now, Victory Room for me, I almost as way back as I can remember anything. I think I came to children's parties here, probably behaved incredibly badly. And more recently, as a parent, my children played for Bucklebury Wolves. It's great seeing David and Kate here. They were also part of the Beavers and the Cubs, which I know is absolutely vital, lifeline for so many families as well. So it's wonderful to be back here and to be launching Village Hall Weeks 2022. When the internet came into our lives, a lot of people said internet would mean many different things. They said it would mean the end of books. Of course it didn't. They also said it would mean the end of places like this because we wouldn't need to meet. Well, of course, they were both wrong. Books are never been more popular. And village halls and community premises are now undergoing a renaissance in a way that many didn't believe possible. And I believe this comes out of an innate sense of our humanity, where we actually do want to look, using the Mark I eyeball, at a fellow human being and to interact with them. And we can't fulfill all that by staring at a screen. We have to do that. We have to meet people and we have to get involved with them at a social level, at a community level. And to do out of that becomes so much that is good in our lives. The people who created these halls a century ago would never have thought of many of the uses that they are applied to today. And I think what we do that is different in the future, what will be happening here in 100 years' time, we can't imagine, but we can start to think about what the younger generation and the new sets of younger parents and other people who live in our communities, what they will want to do in these places. So we've heard how yoga and how fitness and how well-being are so much part of it. And I feel with the restoration of this hall, the playing field and the hall are so much more connected in a way that they never were. And the play area and the whole concept of fitness and well-being I think it's something that can only go from strength to strength. And the fact that 135 children take part in football here at weekends just is a measure of how many families' lives are improved by the provision that comes from here. So these fantastic renovations that you've seen here, and in halls across the country, so many of them funded by the Village Hall Improvement Grant Fund. 125 halls in recent times have had benefits which has seen them being applied to modern use. That inclusiveness, the ability for disabled people to access it and use it in a way that they never did before, will have increased the horizons of people right around this country, and certainly in this community. I love it that this is energy efficient. Some halls are actually carbon negative. They actually are a positive force in terms of helping this country achieve its net zero targets. But it's more than just that. It's about lowering the burden of maintenance now and in the future. That is something that we really have to consider when we are future-proofing these halls for the increasingly expensive times in which we live. And the fact that you've got this new roof secured for 40 years, that's the kind of concept that we want to see being developed around the country. So I would like to join with Tim and Richard and others in thanking everybody who's involved in the management of their village hall. What we in government and what organisations that ACRE is made up from must do is to try and help you make it as easy as possible to manage your village hall. And by and large, those of us who get involved in voluntary activity, the governance side of it is not why we do it. We don't do it to manage the accounts or to do the health and safety audit and the risk assessment. We do it because we love what these places are about and what they're for. And we've got to help people understand that that is why they can and should get involved in it. And I know that there's some grinding stuff that you have to do. I'm a trustee of a village hall in a nearby village of Englefield. And I confess I haven't cleaned the loos yet or emptied the bins, but others do and have. And it's not something that they want to get involved, why they didn't get involved in the first place, but we want to make it a pleasurable experience and to remove as many of the impediments to the joy of these places as we can. A quick word on digital connectivity, because we're live streamed today from a quite rural part of the south. But there are too many communities around our country that don't have good enough digital connectivity. And our project Gigabyte, which is a £5 billion project, which is seeking to push fibre to the premises right out from the towns to the villages and right up into the valleys, the remotest parts and the remotest communities. And if these places are going to be relevant for that future that I talked about, we have to make sure that they are digitally connected. And I'm quite concerned that CCB have discovered that I think 20% of, if I got that right, Kate, of premises in Berkshire are, of village halls in Berkshire are not, don't have the digital connectivity that they need. Now, this is a national event, so I'm not going to harp on about what goes on in my hood, if you like, but I would like to really applaud what's going on around the country. Cafferton Village Hall in Northumberland has an award-winning tea room. And tea rooms for some people are a slightly dated concept, but they are immensely popular. And in an area like this, and I'm sure in Cafferton, where there are a lot of tourists, a lot of walkers, a lot of cyclists, these become absolute lifelines, and huge congratulations to them for getting an award. Nearer to home here at Swallowfield, the Get Active scheme has had an extraordinary effect on people with vulnerabilities, either through age or infirm or long-term infirm conditions. And this is a seated musical movement exercise, and it has transformed people's lives. And Connecting Communities Berkshire, I know, are echoed similar organisations around the country. And the work that Kate Meads has done here does right across this county. And I know that the many Kate Meads' equivalents in counties around the country, that what we can do is make it easy for people to do projects like this, because they don't have to go down, they don't have to start at ground zero. That we know all the impediments of planning, of design, of inclusion, of all those access points that I've talked about. And people like Kate Meads can help deliver this and can make it as painless a process as possible. So my congratulations and thanks to all those Village Halls experts and advisors from around the country. And it's hard to think of these halls without thinking about the pandemic. This has been restored in incredibly difficult times. But the pandemic has seen many wonderful examples of communities who have used their village hall to come together. At Stoke St Marshall in Somerset, they set up a community fridge and bookshare scheme during the pandemic, which has been a lifeline, particularly for people who live on their own and just needed the occasional contact with other human beings, and that has been a lifeline. In other halls, we've seen food delivery points, distribution points, where people's weekly shopping has been brought to the village hall and can be collected, so people don't have to go and put themselves at risk by going to a large supermarket. We've seen childcare for key workers, families, taking place in village halls. We've seen space for the NHS with meeting space, with training, and of course in vaccination. And that has proved to be a lifeline during the pandemic. So in conclusion, what are we talking about when looking forward? What are the uses that have been so successful here and elsewhere that will continue to be important? What will be the future, the cinemas, the cafes, the art and cookery, the keep fit classes that have become so much part of what these places offer? We have to, in village halls, prove that we are adaptable. These places can be work hubs with so many more people working from home, with the technologies we have and with the experience we've learned during the pandemic. There will be occasions when we need to get people together, perhaps closer to where we live, rather than in the middle of towns and cities. So work hubs, charging points for electric vehicles. There are, within 10 years' time, most of the people who live around here will be driving electric vehicles if they're not already doing so. And whether they will have the correct charging points at home, or when they have people visiting, if they need extra charging points, these are the places that can provide it, and provide it at an affordable rate. And of course, there will always be the human need to be entertained. And so I absolutely know that what Acre can provide is a sort of massive national show and tell of all the things that really do work, and what we want to see provided for in the future. But what we do know, most of all, is that village halls will continue to be part of shaping a better future for people who live in communities, some very remote, some in large villages and towns, but they will still be of enormous value, enormous relevance, enormous functionality for generations to come. So do something different is a real call to arms, to try and think and understand what people will want. And I'm really keen to hear from you what we should be doing both in government, DEFRA, but also in supporting organisations like Acre and the really valuable work they do in seeing more of these community hubs continuing to be vital to the communities they serve. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Minister. Show and tell, that's excellent. I think that should be the theme probably for this year and next year. And thank you too for bringing us back to our theme today, to do something different. And so, Village Halls Week 2022 is launched. Now it's up to you to pick up the baton. Make a pledge. Let us know what you're going to do or do differently locally. For its part, the Acre Network pledges to continue to provide its unique support service for village hall committees. And this year, Acre nationally will be reviewing its offer to ensure that wherever you live in rural England, our National Village Halls Information Service will be of the highest calibre and increasingly digitally accessible to all. So watch this space. I'd like to conclude with a few thank yous. Firstly, to our speakers, to Lord Benyon. Thank you so much, Minister, for taking the time to be with us today. To Tim Parry and to John Brims for their contributions, and especially to the Victory Room Management Committee for hosting this event today. Thank you. To Acre's corporate sponsors, Norris and Fisher, and Ansvar, Zurich and Utility Aid, who support the National Village Halls Information Service, including this year's Village Halls Week. Thank you too. And thank you to partner organisations and individuals who are supporting the week with vlogs and events and contributions to the social media campaign. Oh yes, and to my colleagues too, Deborah and Philip, who have been working doggedly behind the scenes to organise Village Halls Week this year. And last, but by no means least, to you guys, both in the room and online, as it's now up to you to take the celebrations, the pledges, and the local activities on from here. So over to you. Thank you. Have a great week.